And now let's turn our attention to the West African nation of Niger. A different type of storm has hit this country, one that could turn it into a battlefield between Russia and the West. I'll explain why in a moment, but first a quick primer. Meet the president of Niger. His name is Mohamed Bazoum. Last week, his presidential guard put him under arrest. Then the military declared they are in charge. Basically, it was a coup. The fourth since the country's independence some 6 decades ago. We covered this last week. But over the past few days, there have been new developments. Other countries have entered the picture. West African nations have issued an ultimatum. They say the president, Bazoum, should be reinstated in 15 days, else they will intervene militarily. The country of Chad is a neighbor of Niger. Their president is visiting. He's talking to the military leaders who pulled off the coup. Meanwhile, the French embassy in Niger has also come under attack. Supporters of the coup threw stones at the embassy. They even tried to start a fire outside the compound and burned the French flag outside the building. What explains this protest? Well, Niger was once a French colony. French forces are still deployed in the country. The protesters want them to leave. They blame France for their problems, for the state of insecurity in Niger and for the rampant militancy in West Africa. And amid all of this, something very interesting was observed. Listen, look at this in fact. Supporters of the coup were seen carrying Russian flags. You saw the flags, they're very similar to the French flag, the same colors, but the Russian flag has the color blue in the middle. Now, the coup supporters raised the Russian flags outside the French embassy in Niger, and some were even seen chanting, "Russia and long live Putin."
We are not against young people raising the Russian flag. It's because they've seen how certain countries in the region are cooperating with Russia, thinking that there's equal treatment, and that's why they've brought out these flags.
So is Russia supporting the coup in Niger? Is it in lockstep with the country's military? If not the Kremlin directly, what about the Wagner mercenary group? Are they supporting these generals in Niger? So far, there have been mixed signals. Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has issued a statement. He has called for a return to constitutional order in Niger. Earlier today, the Kremlin called for restraint from all sides. Russian President Putin said Russia is against coups. And this was yesterday during Russia's Africa summit, but Putin was quick to conflate the situation in Niger with what was happening in Ukraine.
You said, dear colleagues, that we are against coup d'etat. I am in full agreement. We too are against coups d'etat. But the other problem that led to today's crisis is the coup d'etat in Ukraine in 2014. That specifically was an unconstitutional, armed and bloody state coup, which the Western countries actively supported.
It almost sounds like a justification, and Moscow's plea for calm may in fact give time for the military rulers to chalk out their next move. Then there's the Wagner group. Their chief, Yevgeny Prigozhin, has supported this coup in Niger. An audio message was released on a social account linked to Wagner. And here, Prigozhin called the coup a good thing. He even offered the support of Wagner troops. He said his troops could restore order in the country. Now, it's unclear how closely Wagner forces and Russia are aligned in this. So far, there is no evidence of Wagner troops working in Niger. This is what the US said on Thursday.
To your question about Russia, Putin, I know there's been question about Wagner Group as well. Until now, we have not seen incredible indications of Russian or Wagner involvement.
But Wagner troops are active just across the border in the neighboring country of Mali. It's a country that has seen its own military coup in recent months. And Mali's military junta has also blamed the French for their problems. Last year, they expelled French troops from Mali. They burnt down the French embassy, and they've been working closely with Russia and Wagner ever since. Then we come to another neighbor of Niger, a country called Burkina Faso. It saw the exact same scenario play out, a military coup where France was blamed and the generals aligned with Russia. Niger seems to be going down the same road.
We want them to link cooperation ties with Mali and Burkina, with whom we share the common enemy, to combat the terrorism raging in the Sahel.
Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger. 3 countries, one story. Elected governments ousted on the same pretext, their failure to deal with militancy. The region is also known as the Sahel. It is home to many extremist groups. The ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Boko Haram, they've all been operating here for years. The Sahel region has seen 7 coups in the last 3 years. And with every coup, the country shifts towards Moscow and away from the West. The West in general, and France in particular, become the enemy. Now again, there's nothing suggesting Russia's involvement in the Niger coup yet. But there's no doubt that Moscow benefits from what's happening. It keeps getting new authoritarian allies in West Africa, and this makes the region a new arena for Putin to fight the West. And that's what we'll talk about in our next story. Russia and Ukraine still want to bomb each other, but the West seems to have different ideas. As they keep pumping weapons into Ukraine, they're also exploring peace talks. A meeting is scheduled this week. Saudi Arabia is hosting it, and India has been invited to attend. The dates are August 5th and 6th. The venue is in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. And among the invitees are 30-odd countries. They're all expected to send senior officials to attend. Now, we don't have a full guest list, but reports say India and Brazil are invited, so is Ukraine, countries in Europe, also Indonesia, Egypt, Mexico, Chile, and Zambia. They've all been asked to join. Some have confirmed their attendance, like the UK, South Africa, Poland, and the European Union. An official from India is also expected to be present, but Russia has been excluded. That's right. Russia has not got an invite, so they will not have a representative in Jeddah in Saudi Arabia, which raises the obvious question. Why have this meeting at all? Can there be peace or a peace deal without Russia? And what is Saudi Arabia's role here? Let's try answering these questions one by one, starting with the purpose of this meeting. This is not a peace summit. They're not calling it that. It's more like an effort to convince the global South to influence the countries which have not picked a side, countries like India. Ukraine and the West want to win them over. And that's the reason this meeting has been called. Also, this is not the first such meeting. In the month of June, some officials met in Copenhagen, and that was the first round. Although it was a much smaller group, among the attendees were Ukraine, the European Union, Brazil, India, Turkey, and South Africa. And of course, the United States of America. It was represented by Jake Sullivan. He is the US National Security Advisor. He did not attend in person, though. He joined the meeting on call. And this, we are told, was a preliminary conversation. It's not clear what was discussed, but it is believed that the conversation in Copenhagen led to the meeting in Jeddah. So this is the second round. And what will happen in Jeddah? The West is making an effort to find common ground, to get everyone to agree on some principles, like territorial sovereignty, like political independence, to condemn acts of aggression and the use of force. And what is the outcome that they expect from these talks in Saudi Arabia? What's the best case scenario? Perhaps a statement that is based on a widely accepted document, something like the United Nations Charter, that has a set of universally accepted principles which everyone can agree on. And what purpose will this serve? The idea is to tip the balance in Ukraine's favor, to get the global South to agree to a common platform. So when the time comes to discuss a truce with Russia, they can extract the most favorable terms. In other words, these are all preparatory meetings to get the global South on Ukraine's side. That's what the West wants. But it's easier said than done. The global South frowns upon Western sanctions. It refuses to give up its strategic autonomy just to fulfill Ukraine's wishes. You see, Kiev has pushed a rather ambitious peace plan. Ukraine wants the return of all occupied territories, and it wants all Russian troops to leave their country before any peace talks can even begin. The same plan was discussed in Copenhagen. Reports say the developing world refused to support it. Now, we don't know who specifically opposed the plan, but the attendees were the likes of India, Brazil, and South Africa, like we told you. So it has to be one or more of them. Apparently, there was just one area of flexibility, the idea of shared principles. That's what they all agreed on, and that's what led to the talks in Jeddah. But why Jeddah of all places? Because the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is eyeing a bigger role in world affairs. It wants to play peacemaker in Ukraine. And it has already delivered on some fronts, like facilitating a prisoner exchange and hosting Zelensky for an Arab summit in the month of May this year. That's when Riyadh said it wanted to hear from all sides. Listen to this.
Our invitation to Ukrainian President Zelensky came to hear from all sides. Since the start of the conflict, Arab countries took a decision to be positively objective. We were engaged in starting a dialogue between both sides in the hope of reaching a solution stemming from dialogue. All Arab countries are convinced that this conflict will be resolved through dialogue.
So they wanted a dialogue. Now they have a chance to host it. Saudi Arabia ticks a lot of boxes for the West. It is close to both Russia and China. It can be a mediator and influencer, and the West is betting on this. As the war drags on, it is hoping that support from the global South will tilt the balance in Ukraine's favor. We say it's an optimistic mission. Now let's talk about China. Xi Jinping's pet project, the Belt and Road Initiative, has suffered a setback. Italy is a member of the BRI, the Belt and Road Initiative, and now Italy wants to leave. The decision is not official yet, but the writing is on the wall. The Italian defense minister has spoken his mind. His name is Guido Crosetto. He was discussing the BRI agreement. He said Italy's decision to join the BRI was quote-unquote improvised and atrocious. Now they want to leave, but they're not sure how to leave. Listen to what the minister said, and I'm quoting, "The issue today is how to walk back from the BRI without damaging relations with Beijing, because it is true that China is a competitor, but it is also a partner." Then Italy's Prime Minister spoke about this, Giorgia Meloni. She gave an interview on Sunday. She was asked if Italy would stay or leave. Meloni said they haven't made a decision yet, but they will by December. And which way is she leaning? It seems Giorgia Meloni wants to exit with minimal damage. She wants to leave the Belt and Road, but also maintain a trade relationship with China. Listen to her statement, and I'm quoting again. "You can have good relations with China without the Belt and Road Initiative. But it's something, in my opinion, has to be discussed with Chinese government and well inside of the Italian parliament. But anyway, we will take a decision before December." This is what the Prime Minister said. Now, Italy, we know, is in an awkward situation, the odd one out in BRI, the only G7 member in this Chinese project. G7 is a group of 7 largely Western economies that were once the world's richest. Italy is a member of this club, the G7, and it signed up for the BRI. This happened in the year 2019, and it was a big coup for Beijing. In fact, Xi Jinping went to Rome himself for this. He took a victory lap when Italy agreed to sign this deal. The Chinese president said, "This partnership will benefit both parties."
We agreed that we need to strengthen synergies between the two parties and our respected development strategies to enhance collaboration in the infrastructure, ports, logistics, and shipping sectors. The goal is to build concrete and quality projects along the Silk Way.
Italy was reeling from a debt crisis, so the collaboration with Beijing made sense in 2019. But it hasn't been a win-win like Xi Jinping promised them. Trade between the two countries remains lopsided. It is tilted heavily in Beijing's favor. In May 2023, China's exports to Italy were worth over $4 billion. But Rome sent back less than $3 billion worth of goods. Now, there is a brake on investments too. Italy signed up for the BRI under the leadership of Giuseppe Conte. Conte allowed a series of large investments, but his successor, Mario Draghi, was wary. He blocked several Chinese acquisitions in Italy. And where does the current leader, Giorgia Meloni, stand? Well, she's a hardliner. She wants closer economic integration with the West. This month, she visited Washington and she vowed to improve trade ties with the US.
The United States is our most important trade partner outside the European Union. And I do agree with you, Joe, that our trade partnership is very high, but no reason why we could not improve it.
But she cannot improve ties with the US until she quits the BRI. So what's the roadblock? The major problem is negotiating this exit. Italy fears a retaliation from China. A former Italian diplomat has spoken about this. His name is Stefano Stefanini. He was Italy's ambassador to NATO, and he described Rome's dilemma in these words. Given the state of relations between the US and China, we cannot remain an ally of the US and at the same time remain in the BRI. We have to try to negotiate a peaceful or the least damaging possible exit with the Chinese. And this is what the Italian leader, Meloni, has to navigate. A clear path for Italy's exit from the Belt and Road Initiative. And she needs time till December for this, she says. Here is what might help her. China's falling investments. Beijing is pouring less money into the BRI now, and I have some numbers. In 2020, China invested more than $60 billion in the BRI. The next year, in 2021, the funding fell to a little over $56 billion. There was a surge of bad loans. In the last 3 years, investments worth $78 billion have been affected. And these were loans that turned sour for Beijing. Either the debt was renegotiated or it had to be written off. So Giorgia Meloni could always argue that the BRI is no longer an attractive proposition for her country. But she is banking on the West to step up to offer the kind of money that China brings to the table. Can the US and Europe match up? And is that a game that they want to play? We should have our answers by December. There was a big cricket final yesterday. Some 370 runs were scored. One of the captains also hit a century. But chances are you did not hear about it. Do you know why? Because this match did not happen in Mumbai or Karachi or Melbourne. It happened in Dallas, in the United States of America. Now, I know what you're thinking. Do people even watch cricket in the US? Well, most of them don't. And that's what this new cricket league is hoping to change. It is called MLC, or Major League Cricket. The first season has just been completed. 6 teams were involved this time. Some of their names will ring a bell, like Los Angeles Knight Riders, or Mumbai Indians New York, or Texas Super Kings. These teams are owned by Indian Premier League clubs. They're basically IPL subsidiaries. MI New York won yesterday's match. They were crowned the inaugural champions. But how was the local response? Well, it's a bit complicated. Don't think of the MLC like you think of the IPL. The IPL is worth around $15 billion. The MLC has only invested around $180 million. So let's not even compare the two. The infrastructure is also not up to the mark. Most of the matches were played in baseball stadiums. They had to be converted to play cricket. Nonetheless, the local participation was good. Most matches were sold out. A majority of the crowd was made up of South Asians. The league has big plans, in fact, in the coming years. All 6 teams have committed to building home stadiums. They also have some savvy investors. The team from Seattle, for instance, is co-owned by Satya Nadella. He's the CEO of Microsoft. The team from Texas is co-owned by Ross Perot Jr. He's a prominent businessman, also the son of a former presidential candidate. The big highlight is the South Asian participation, mostly Indian Americans. As a business decision, it makes perfect sense. Indian Americans have the money, they have the political clout, they also have the interest. So if you want to grow cricket in the US, you can't do it without Indian Americans. But that alone is not going to be enough. Let me show you some numbers. Cricket has around 4 million fans in the United States. Cycling has almost double that. Basketball has 48 million. Baseball, 53 million. So cricket has a long way to go. And don't think this is just a private sector project. The ICC, or the International Cricket Council, is also on the job. They have awarded next year's T20 World Cup to the US and West Indies. 4 American cities will host matches. They're also looking to include cricket in the 2028 Los Angeles Olympics. So there is a big roadmap already in place. But what explains the sudden interest in the US? Why does cricket want to crack America? For starters, there is big money. Let me show you a comparison. During the IPL playoffs, advertisements in fact cost around $90,000. That's $90,000 for a 30-second video. Guess how much the Super Bowl charges? $7 million. The North American market is massive. The ad money, the streaming money, the ticket costs, all of this is much higher than anywhere in the world. And that's one reason. The second reason is this. Cricket needs an expansion plan. It is the second most watched sport on the planet. Around 2.5 billion people watch cricket. But most of them are from one region, the Indian subcontinent. You take that out and cricket loses all the money and relevance. Consider this. The next FIFA World Cup will have 48 teams. But the next Cricket World Cup will have only 10. It remains a game limited to Britain's former colonies. The goal is to break away from that, to get more and more countries to play cricket. And I know all of this sounds exciting, especially if you're watching us from India, but this is all easier said than done. Cricket is a grassroots game. You need to have proper systems right down to the local district. Only then can you field a good national team. Can the US build such a system? More importantly, do they want to build such a system? You can't bank only on South Asian support to build cricket in America. You need non-immigrants to get hooked. And how do you do that? Easy, by building a good team. Indians are hooked on cricket because our teams do well. Same with Australia or England or South Africa. No one wants to see their country lose, and knowing the Americans more so. If the US can field a good side, maybe win some matches, then things will change. Which is why the MLC is so important. It can give American cricketers more exposure, it can create the best infrastructure, and of course, the money helps. If cricket can establish itself in the US, it could set the stage for further expansion. And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story, starting with a visual treat for all the adventure junkies out there, in fact. An athlete walked the world's longest single building slackline in Qatar. The slackline was at a height of over 185 meters. It was only about 2 centimeters wide. A word of caution, please do not try something like this on your own. In the United States, a fisherman celebrating his birthday got to see a sight so rare that even marine scientists are in awe. He saw 3 humpback whales jumping in perfect synchronization. The man called it a once-in-a-lifetime experience. In California, a man walked into his backyard only to find a bear making the most of his jacuzzi. Temperatures are rising and everyone has simple bare necessities. Excuse the Jungle Book pun. Finally, we're taking you back in history. On this day in 1971, Apollo 15 became the first mission to use the lunar roving vehicle. Previous teams of astronauts were restricted to short walking distance around the landing site, and this was because of bulky spacesuits. But lunar roving vehicles changed the game. They offered greater surface mobility. Fun fact, it took only 17 months to develop this technology. Experts say many scientific discoveries made in the consecutive Apollo missions would not have been possible without these lunar roving vehicles. And a quick update before we go. If you miss our live show at 9 p.m. IST, do not worry. You can now catch a repeat at 7:30 a.m. on weekdays. Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
Copy. We're all looking at it now.
I'm bringing.
Oh, you guys get ready.
Transmitted copy.